Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the undefeated post-weigh-in show for UFC Orlando. Your boy Clint here, bringing to you these final looks, checking out these fighters as they step on the scales today, as they face off with their opponents, give you every last little tidbit of information we possibly can to make a smart investment tomorrow at these fights on Saturday. Hopefully, put an extra little jingle in that pocket of yours. This is Pub Sports Radio. Subscribe here if you haven't already. Hit the video with a like. These lines are brought to you by Superbook Sports. As always, make sure you check out Spectation Sports. They have a regional scene event also going on tomorrow. Use promo code DIEHARD to sign up there for a discount. Let's dive straight into this bad boy. Yasmin Horegi taking on Estela Nunez starting the night off. We've got Horegi coming in at 115.5 pounds. Estela Nunez 114.5 pounds. Both women look fantastic. Nunez looked strong on the scale, good flex, great shape. Yasmin Horegi looked very intense, abs popping ridiculously. She looks phenomenal. This was a respectful face-off. Both ladies size up pretty well. They both look relaxed. They both look ready. I've been debating taking a stab on Estela Nunez basically all week. So Nunez is plus 265 right now. We've got Yasmin as a minus 320 favorite. And guys, I like Yasmin Horegi just as much as the next one, but she is only 23 years old. She looked fantastic in her first fight, but she also left herself open for a lot of big counters. She had a lot of big shots. She got wobbled by a girl who primarily is a grappler. That was an exciting, fun fight, but this seems like such a drastic overcorrection from that first fight. You know, if we're talking percentages and betting lines, this is a dogger pass spot for me. Like, I can't wrap my brain around minus 320 in this fight. Estela Nunez is a pretty damn good striker, and she's coming out of ATT. She's 30 years old, so she is rounding out into her prime, and at the best gym in the world. Like, you got to expect improvements as far as the game plan, the IQ, the adjustments, things like that. I think we're going to see a better version of Nunez on Saturday. The problem is I still kind of think Yasmin wins. Like, it's one of these dogger pass spots where I'm like, I want to take the value on the underdog because I think it'll be a close fight. But if she doesn't get her arm raised, I'm going to feel really dumb for going against the minus 300 favorite here in the first fight of the night. I really am eyeballing Nunez for a small bet. And then I'm also really looking at this under 2.5. The one thing that I like from both these women is they really come to throw. Like, Nunez gassed herself out, breaking her own gas tank on the face of my girl Sam Page. So, like, lesser women would have gone down from that brutal beatdown in that first round. Sam is tough as shit and grinded her way back into that fight, got the win. I don't know if Yasmin's built that way. Now, we'll find out, but we've seen her rocked and wobbled before from a lesser striker. Those kind of shots may take more of a toll on someone like Yasmin. And on the other side of this, we've already seen Estela Nunez finish twice. She can gas out. She can put too much effort into finishing a fight and then ends up in a bad compromised position and finds her way out of the cage. I think we could see violence here in this first fight of the night. Now, the under 2.5 is plus 175. I probably would want to do fight doesn't go the distance. I've been bit by that 2.5 a couple times already this year. If I'm going to play violence, I'm probably going to find a fight doesn't go the distance before I actually lock it in. But I think this is one of those spots where maybe you go 1-1, you go dog and under, and as long as the favorite either finishes like they're supposed to, or if the underdog shows up, you win either way, right? Like, you risk 2 units and you got profit on one side or the other, and hopefully if Nunez pulls off the finish, you cash them both. And that's the plan I'm kind of attacking this first fight with. I got a couple more bets I want to take into consideration, maybe locking in for tomorrow. Next fight up, we've got Francis the Fire Marshal taking on Marcelo Rojo. Both guys came in at 145. Francis Marshall is well muscled. This guy looks fantastic. He looks like a Ken doll up there. Seriously, like, he's clean. And the poor guy, the dude on the scale calling the weight left him hanging. Absolutely left him hanging. He like did the weight and then just like walked off, and you can see Francis like because he doesn't know how much he weighs yet. Like, it was pretty hysterical actually, but he made 145 right on the dot. Looked good doing it. Marcelo Rojo, he looked great as well, moved well, flexing, really feeling himself on the scale there today. Slight size advantage when they faced off for Marshall. Rojo looks super excited for this fight. Guys, this is the Dana White Contender Series fade spot on the card where you've got a kid that's coming off the Contender Series, looks phenomenal, stepping up in stepping up in caliber of opposition. And he's the favorite over a UFC caliber fighter, someone who's got experience, against a couple of really tough dudes so far already here in the UFC. Rojo's plus 150, minus 170 on Francis. I'm going to pick Francis to win, and I can't just blindly bet the Dana White Contender Series fade in this particular spot. The other question in this spot is that this is another Krause fight where, I mean, everybody knows what's going on with sports betting in the world today, and the James Krause situation. Canada has their markets being closed down because of all this stuff. Marcelo Rojo trains out of Glory MMA. Who's going to be in his corner? What has the training been like over there with all of the investigation and all this kind of stuff going on? Has he been without a coach for this matchup? Does any of that matter? I don't know. There's a lot of questions involved in this one, so frankly, I'm not going to get involved. The over 1.5 seems good enough. We've seen Marcelo Rojo take and give a beating early in a fight, and then either breaks his opponent deeper in the fight. I think that can happen in this type of situation, but that's been touched already. Minus 185 for the over 1.5. It seems like a lot to me, so that's kind of the way I would be looking, would be for this fight to go a little bit late. And honestly, guys, if I was going to attack a prop here in this spot, I would be looking for Rojo by sub. You know, Francis Marshall, we've seen him overextend on his punches. We've seen him make some mistakes grappling. Rojo's actually got a pretty decent little submission game on him. I could see this fight getting scrambly, and the later it goes, Rojo just having that vet savvy, that veteranship to be able to fall back on and maybe making Francis Marshall pay for a mistake he makes on the ground when he tries to mix in the wrestling or something like that. So I can see both guys finding paths to victory. I could also see both guys finding paths to a finish. So another maybe doesn't go the distance type of spot, even though I said the over 1.5 makes sense to me. I don't know that we make it all 15 minutes. I'm not touching this fight. Let's move on from there. Gianno Valdez taking on Nathan Levy. Levy 156 and Gianno Valdez matching that 156 on the scale, on the dot. Levy is jacked, folks. Like, this guy is a monster up there. Walk very slowly and deliberately, which sometimes I take as being like a gingerly stepping because you had a bad weight cut type of thing. He jogged off the scale, looked completely fine afterwards, so I'm not too worried about it. Valdez looked amped up today. You know, he came off of getting the brakes blown off of him by Matt the Steamroller Frivola in his UFC debut. So he's kind of looking to right that wrong here in this spot. You can tell he's really put some prep in. He's excited for this fight. Tons of energy. Literally sprinted off the stage. And then these guys size up pretty well. Levy was intense. Valdez looked more excited than anything, but Levy was like trying to mean mug this guy and stare him down. I still am struggling to wrap my brain around the minus 200 for Nathan Levy. I really don't want any part of Gianno Valdez. I'm not entirely sure that he's UFC caliber. This could be one of those guys that's a Dana White Contender Series flash in the pan. He's stunning early in the fight. He's got lots of finishing upside. He's just kind of a physical freak. He throws caution to the winds. That's going to get him finishes. That's going to get him wins. But when he faces an opponent that's better than him, somebody that doesn't wilt under that pressure, that's going to get him finished instead. So I kind of think Nathan Levy has this guy pipped pretty much everywhere, and I do think this fight ends inside the distance at some point, whether that's Valdez finding Levy and cracking him early, or if this fight hits the ground. I think Levy's got a decent grappling advantage here in this spot, probably will be able to submit Gianno Valdez, but the later this fight goes, this is the question here for me, because Valdez's fights never go late. Like, usually it seems like he gasses out in the second round, but we've seen Levy gas out badly in his fights also. So I'm not sure who's going to have the advantage if this thing gets into round 3. Either way, violence is really kind of the only way I would look. I will side with the favorite Nathan Levy. Nothing super interesting at the weigh-ins, though, swaying me one way or the other. Unfortunately, we lost our ladies fight. No Cortez. Something happened with her medically. Hoping she gets feeling better. Wishing her well in a speedy recovery. Next up, Darren Elkins taking on JSP, Jonathan Pierce. Elkins made 145, JSP made 146. Classic Elkins, no issues. You know, this guy looks like he looks like a bag of milk up there. I love Darren Elkins. I'm the biggest fan of Darren Elkins, but like, we're used to this, right? He's never been the most physically imposing. He's never been the most physically impressive. You don't think much of him, but if you ran into him in a bar, he would take you into the back alley and beat the brakes off of you. So can't really comment much about his scale presence here. JSP looks shredded on the other hand. This kid is really rounding out physically as he kind of grows into his body here in the UFC. Looked fantastic. Intense face-off. JSP is huge. He's got like a full head on Darren the Damage Elkins. He's a minus 500 favorite in this spot. Elkins is a plus 400 underdog, and I just got the heebie-jeebies. You guys know I'm Fight Ready boy. Like, I love Team Fight Ready. I love what they're doing. I love the crop of talent that they've got. I think this fight is going to be awesome. But the one thing that Darren Elkins has always been able to do is when you try to push a pace on him, he breaks you. Like, nobody puts a pace on Darren Elkins. He's the one that puts a pace on people. So I think if Jonathan Pierce comes out with that grappling heavy, scrambly heavy approach, I just don't know if that's going to work for him in this particular case. He should be the younger version of Darren Elkins. He's bigger, he's younger, he's got the cardio, he's mean, he's nasty, he's at a good camp. Like, it all adds up. I'm just not ready to pronounce Darren Elkins dead on arrival just yet. This is a spot that I'll be looking for a live betting opportunity, though. I am not going to put any money in pre-flop, but if Elkins survives early and it looks like JSP is starting to get tired and doesn't have the power to put Elkins down, I think I'll jump in on Darren Elkins live in this spot. Now, that's kind of the trick there, because JSP should start out good. He should start hard. And Elkins, I'm really worried about his durability at this point. He's, his last fight, he didn't have any threat of a knockout whatsoever, so he was able to go a full 15 minutes and looked fine. Here he's taken on this young kid in Pierce, more of a grappler than a striker, but he should still be able to find the chin and knock out Elkins. If he can't do that, this fight gets very, very interesting. So I could see Elkins turning the tables on Jonathan Pierce and maybe winning third round TKO, something like that. That's the Darren Elkins classic. But I am going to pick Jonathan Pierce to win. I do expect him to win. It probably comes in the second round if he's going to do it. We'll see what Elkins has left in the tank. This is definitely a sit back and learn kind of fight, because there's just no point in getting involved unless you really think Darren Elkins is live in there to pull this thing off. You'll get plenty of a juicy number for that if you like it. Mark Diakiese taking on Michael Johnson. Diakiese made 155.5, Johnson 156. Diakiese looked intense today. Very focused, insanely shredded as always. The bot on this guy is absolutely ridiculous. Michael Johnson looked a bit soft. He's got this weird spot on his rib cage, which I thought it was staph at first, and then I went back and looked at it, and it almost looks like one of his ribs is protruding weird. That seems like a new thing. I'm not sure what the hell's going on with his abs. I will try to figure that out. But these guys were talking the whole time at the face-offs. We've got Diakiese, who's a decent bit larger than Michael Johnson. I've got Diakiese in a parlay. I've got him linked up with somebody later on in the card. I just think he should be able to nullify Michael Johnson everywhere. Now, obviously, Michael Johnson's got fast hands, and he hits hard. He is live to bonk pretty much anybody in this division early on in the fight. We've seen him fall apart more than once. We've seen him tire out and succumb to the grappling more than once. We've seen him tap more than once. Preview, folks. Preview. I am doing my prop squad article here on my guy Mark Diakiese, and you can get him by submission right now. He is 12-1 by sub, and I think especially after the Michael Bisping call out last time, Bisping was getting on Mark Diakiese about, well, if you're going to dominate your opponent, like, you might as well finish him, and he was like, let me get my confidence back first. This is exactly the opponent that will shell up and give you that sub. We have seen him tap 9 times in his professional career. Michael Johnson, when he is getting smothered on the ground, when he is getting beaten in the grappling, will give you opportunities to submit him. And I think that's what's going to happen on Saturday. If Diakiese, even if he mixes in the striking, which he's more than capable of, by the way, if he decides to take this thing to the ground later on in the fight, once Michael Johnson gets tired, I think he'll find his way to a finish. And I think submission is actually more than likely, more so than the knockout, and 12-1. By the way, folks, that was 13-1 this morning. So a little bit of movement has come in on that. Somebody else likes that sub prop over there at Superbook Sports as well. Next up, we've got Scott Holtzman taking on Clay the Carpenter Guida. 154.5 for Clay Guida, 155.5 for Scott Holtzman. Guida basically sprinted in, threw up the deuces. Big energy from this guy, as always. Looked great on the scale. Scott Holtzman is oh my God. This guy has so much muscle on him. It's ridiculous. He looks like he was literally chiseled out of stone. At the face-offs, though, this was like fun family times, old man face-off. Scott Holtzman brought his kin in, had him riding on his shoulders, doing the good papa thing, and Clay Guida brought the kid like a little bottle of hot sauce and stuff. It was fun. It was good fun for everybody. Clay Guida bouncing all over the place, man. I want half his energy when I'm 40 years old. I'm 35. Fuck. I need to get that energy level up at this point if I'm going to get there in 5 years. But there's a decent size advantage here for Scott Holtzman. Holtzman is a minus 170 favorite, plus 150 for Clay Guida. The big thing for me here is this is Scott Holtzman's retirement fight. Apparently he went on Ariel Helwani's show and confirmed that this is his last fight. Folks, you know me, there's no such thing as a happy ending in mixed martial arts. These guys that come in knowing full damn well that they are retiring after their next fight, it's a mental thing. They haven't trained quite as hard. They've got one foot out the door. They're taking an opponent that they think isn't going to be much of a threat to them. They know there's no future here. Like, if they get in a bad situation, why are you fighting back that hard? It's over after this. Like, it just never ends well for these guys that are coming in knowing full well they're hanging it up afterwards. So for me, it's dog or pass. Like, I know Scott Holtzman is bigger. I know he's probably stronger. He's a decent wrestler. He probably hits harder. But Clay Guida is the guy who's active in the division. He's the guy that he's got goals in the UFC. He's still looking to set the record for fights and takedowns in the UFC. Like, he wants to be in there competing. He's got that awkward speed and movement. I think he can keep away from Holtzman on the feet. I think he can out-volume him on the feet. It's going to be a question of who wins in these grappling transitions, and Clay's a damn good wrestler. So even if Scott is bigger, stronger, Clay is going to be live in that spot. It's dog or pass for me. Both these guys, 39 and 40 years old, I don't have much of an incentive to bet on either of them, so I'm probably not going to have any action here on this one. Could be a split decision type of fight if you like those split decision props, but I'm going to side with the dog here. I'll say Clay Guida, and again, probably just not betting this one. Emily Ducote taking on Angela Overkill Hill. Both women made 115 and a half. Ducote rocking the big glasses up there, blank stare and flex, casual as ever. Didn't look like she hardly wanted to be there. Angela Hill, classic Angie. She's in great shape. Never an issue for her. When they face off, slight size advantage for Angela Hill. I kind of thought they would size up a little bit better here, but Angie's got a significant little size advantage here. We've got Ducote's a minus 125 favorite. Angie is a plus 105 underdog. And I've been bouncing back and forth all week on this one. I've been bouncing back and forth. I think Angela Hill obviously has the resume, the upside, the experience, but Ducote is younger, and it looks like she hits harder. Angie's got the volume. Like, I don't know. This, again, is, auto bet Angela Hill split decision, right? Like, that's what happens in every single Angela Hill fight, is it goes to a split decision. I do think Emily Ducote probably will get the nod just based on the power and effective striking. The way that she had her opponent hurt in her UFC debut, I think shows a level of power that maybe Angie isn't capable of. But Angie is more than capable of tanking. So even though it'll come down to volume versus power. The judge sitting behind the desk on this one is going to decide who wins, and it's going to be a close competitive fight. So I really don't see the point in picking a side and flipping a coin on this one unless you've got some kind of an angle that you're really in love with here, because minus 125 plus 105 sounds right to me. Niko Price taking on Phil Rowe. Price 170 on the dot, Phil Rowe 173 and a half. Niko Price stormed onto the scale today. Crazy jacked. Like, this guy looks fantastic physically. He's insane, folks. Like, the good kind of insane. He, stuck his tongue out. He's screaming, running off the stage. And I mean, running off the stage. I love Niko Price. Phil Rowe, 173 and a half. We got to miss, folks. Missed weight by 3 pounds. Looked half dead on the scale, by the way. Didn't look good at all. Extremely uncomfortable, and it's a decent size miss. He's a huge dude, big frame for this weight class, so I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more misses from Phil Rowe, considering how much he cuts to try to get down here. Rowe acting super cool with the sunglasses at the face-offs. That's a strike, buddy. Like, I love Phil Rowe. He's a guy I've bet on before a couple times, had pretty solid success betting on him in his last couple of fights, but you miss weight, you're giving up 30% of your purse, and then you're going to come in and mean mug your opponent looking down on him with your glasses. Get out of here with that, man. Height advantage obviously goes to Rowe. Niko Price not phased in the least. This line has been bouncing around, opened up close to evens. Niko Price now a minus 130 favorite. Rowe is a plus 110 underdog. Rowe got all the way up to plus 120, 125 or 130, and he's been bet down since. I'm looking on biting low here on Niko Price, not only because I leaned to him initially, but now also because of the weigh-in situation. Phil Rowe looked like he had a real hard time getting his weight all the way down there. It's another sketchy situation, though. Niko Price coming off of a long layoff, not the most trustworthy fighter, not the best IQ fighter. Those are big questions for me, and laying chalk on him is always a little bit terrifying. Minus 130, I think I can justify it. I do think that with the power that he has, Rowe could be in danger of getting knocked out himself. We've seen him hurt by a couple of his previous opponents. And then I actually think Price might have a wrestling advantage here. Not a BJJ grappling advantage, but a wrestling advantage. So if this fight is on the ground, Price can hold his own. If it's on the feet, I think Price can also hold his own. And we've seen questions about Phil Rowe. He's fought literally nobody also in the UFC. Phil Rowe has fought a very, very poor level of competition. So if Price is good after, his surgical repairs and stuff, if he comes in with a good game plan, I think he can win this fight. At the end of the day, I do think somebody gets finished, though. Whether it's Phil Rowe finding his way to a sub or having a big round 2 comeback like he always does, I can absolutely see him getting a finish over Niko Price. We've seen Price get knocked out a couple times also, but Price, the way he knocks people out is just brutal and it's vicious. And if he gets on top of Phil Rowe, I absolutely think that finish is going to be there. So violence in that fight, I think, makes a ton of sense as well. Next up, we've got Eryk Anders taking on Kyle Daukaus. Anders made 186, Daukaus 184.5. Anders looked fantastic, great shape, except completely exhausted. His weight cuts are tough. This is a big muscly dude, and he always has a hard time getting down to 185. Now, Kyle Daukaus, tall and lanky, rocking the porn stash today, which I can't say I'm a huge fan of that, but no issues. Kyle Daukaus has a size advantage here. I mean, he's massive. Like, Kyle Daukaus is one of those guys that you look at and you're like, but then when he faces off with his opponents, it's like, oh shit, like he's actually a pretty big dude. Right now you've got Daukaus as a minus 215 favorite. Eryk, ya boy Anders, plus 185 the underdog. And I actually like both the underdog and the under in this spot. Kyle Daukaus I've got massive questions about. His BJJ is slick. He's got good submissions, those long lanky arms. He can find his way to a comeback, absolutely. But his striking doesn't seem to have a whole lot of oomph behind it. It's almost like he doesn't have much of a game plan. Like, he's just kind of throwing stuff out there on the feet, and his defense is bad. He is hittable, and when he gets hit, he gets hurt. His chin is incredibly suspect. I worry about his chin, and I think someone like Eryk Anders can take advantage of that. He can be hurt, he can be rocked, he can be knocked out. We've seen it very recently, in fact, and this is a quick turnaround for a guy who did just get knocked out. So I think Eryk Anders is live in that sense. But I also think the violence is live, because Eryk Anders, coming out in an interview that I listened to, he talked about not wanting to leave this one in the hands of the judges. He wants to go out there and trust his gas tank, push a pace, put some hands on Kyle Daukaus, get a knockout, get him out of there. You know, don't worry about the judges robbing him on a split decision, that kind of thing. I actually think that lends itself to an under here, because I do think Anders can knock out Kyle Daukaus, even though he's not the biggest hitter in the world, just because Daukaus is chinny. But I think Daukaus, on the flip side of this thing, is going to be live for a submission. Eryk Anders tires himself out, like in almost every fight. You know, we saw it a couple fights ago when he almost had the dentist, Darren Stewart, out of the fight. He blew his wad trying to finish him and couldn't quite do it. I was scared for that fight going the rest of the way, because I thought he was going to have nothing left in the tank and lose a decision. Well, if that happens here against someone like Kyle Daukaus and he shoots a bad takedown, he leaves his arm or his neck out there, he's going to get tapped. We've seen Eryk Anders tapped multiple times before. I think this fight absolutely can find its way to an under one way or the other. So violence probably my favorite spot on that one. Lean to the dog, Eryk Anders, because plus 185, how can you pass that up? And then, of course, sprinkle on the Anders by knockout. Over here at Superbook Sports, you're getting 575 on the KO prop, so that'll probably make itself into some of my degenerate action here on Saturday. Roman Dolidze taking on Jack the Joker. Hermansson, we're getting up here. This is a long card, folks, so bear with me. Dolidze made 185.5. Jack Hermansson made 186, and Dolidze is a big, intense, hairy Georgian man. You gotta love it. Looked fantastic up there on the scales, gave a huge flex and a terrifying smile. Jack the Joker, on the other hand, needed the box of shame. He came out, and as soon as they read the weight, he like covered his face up, looked like he was gonna get emotional. Jack looked like he was gonna cry when he made weight. This man had a hard weight cut, and you could tell by his reaction that he was not expecting to make weight. He looked wiped up there. When they face off, Dolidze is a decent bit larger than Jack. This is another one where I'm like, at 185, Jack is not a small man. I expected these guys to size up relatively well, and I didn't expect Dolidze to have the sheer size advantage that he has in this spot. You've got Dolidze a plus 165 underdog. Jack the Joker Hermansson is a minus 185 favorite. And while I do think Jack can implement some of the stuff that he did against Chris Curtis, stick and move, stay to the outside, frustrate his larger opponent, I didn't expect the size difference, and that does make a difference, because we are in the small cage, and if he gets cornered by someone like Dolidze, and Dolidze gets his hands on him, that size and strength and power difference may find its way into this fight. I think Jack's the better wrestler, but he also will roll for legs, which means he could end up under Dolidze, and I said the opposite was true on Monday, that I kind of expect Jack to be able to get on top. I'm kind of realizing now that both these guys like to roll for leg locks. You could end up with Joker on his back as opposed to being the other way around. I really don't want to trust Jack at minus 185. If he wins this fight, I'm expecting it to be kind of a risk-adverse approach like his last fight was, and it probably goes the distance, so Jack by decision, or even the over 2.5 at minus 135. Those kind of sound like the ways that I would look if you're in the Joker Hermansson side of things. I have a hard time seeing Roman Dolidze getting finished in this spot. Dude is made out of sheer iron. Like, he does not get hurt by anything. Jack doesn't have a ton of offense as far as his striking goes. He doesn't knock a bunch of people out or anything like that. So if he's winning the striking, it's not going to get finished. And then if it goes to the ground, I think Dolidze's submission defense is solid enough for him to go ahead and survive and stay in this fight. So it's either Roman Dolidze by finish or it's Jack the Joker by decision. I mean, maybe if Dolidze gets on top and Ryan's, grinds out some of that time, he could win a decision here in this spot. Actually, now that I'm looking at the numbers, Jack by decision is plus 145. Dolidze by decision is plus 700. Holy crap. Like, look at the difference between those numbers. The bookies are like, no. Dolidze has no shot if this goes 15 minutes. I wouldn't mind a little flyer on Dolidze at plus 700 because that's an insane number. Now, Jack, we've seen him hurt and wobbled before, so if Dolidze's power is real, obviously the knockout prop is going to be in play, and that's plus 375. But I would still be kind of siding with the Joker over 2.5, Joker by decision, those kinds of things here in this spot. But again, not a bet that I'm just like trampling people to get to the window to put money on. I think I'm going to watch this one. Dolidze, I can't tell if he's real or not, guys. Like, Dolidze is Bigfoot for me. I caught like a really fuzzy picture of him out the window, but the sun was in my eyes, so you can't quite make out if it's really him or just, my uncle in a hairy suit with his shoes off. So I'm not sure. I'm going to watch this fight and I'll see if Dolidze is the real deal. I used to go to war with the Georgians constantly. Like, I would blind bet my Georgian warriors, and for some reason, now that they're starting to rise in the ranks, I'm kind of hesitating here a little bit. I should have bet Dolidze his last fight, but I think Jack is so much better than someone like Phil Hawes, so I don't know if I just want to run it straight back and jump on Dolidze again in a quick turnaround spot, but I also don't blame you, especially if you have been grinding on this Mr. Steal Your Girl train. Go right back to it. I mean, if you're free rolling with Dolidze, have at it. There's no reason to jump off right now. Next up, we got Sergei Pavlovich taking on Tui Vasa. Pavlovich 255, Tuivasa 266, absolutely tipping the scales for Tui Vasa. Sergei gave a huge flex. This dude is gigantic. He looks like you stuck like a balloon, like a basketball pump in him and just like inflated him. He's massive. Tui Vasa, classic Thai, throwing up the dubs. Not as big a size difference as I expected. I really thought Sergei was going to like tower over Tui Vasa in this spot. These guys size up really well, actually. Sergei will have a decent reach advantage here, but Tui Vasa, I think, is extremely live in this spot. I think the movement, the speed, the leg kicks, those are all things that favor Tui Vasa. The question is the quick turnaround coming off of a knockout loss. That's a little bit concerning. So I would be leaning with Tui Vasa here myself, especially with the knockout prop. I just still have so many questions about Sergei Pavlovich. He's so round one or bust. Like, he's only ever gotten one opponent that ever gave him any kind of pushback, and he folded the second he faced adversity. So I think Tui Vasa might be the kind of guy who can make him go to that dark place again and see whether or not he's got it in him to continue. I'd be leaning dogger pass there on that one. I'm very tempted to add Tui Vasa as a bet. Matheus Nicolau taking on Matt Danger Schnell. Nicolau made 126, and actually so did Schnell. He missed it first by a half pound, needed the box of shame, looked rough, folks. I mean, we know Matt Schnell at this point, right? Like, he never looks good on weigh-in day. Eyes sunken in, mouth hanging out open. However, he went back, he shaved his head, he got that half pound off, and he did make weight. He came in at 126. That's the kind of thing where you got to respect the effort. You just have to respect the sheer will to go ahead and make weight and stay in this fight. These guys size up really well. Matt Schnell's slightly taller. This was a respectful face-off. This is the other side of my parlay here. I do have Matheus Nicolau as the closing leg of my two-teamer parlay. I just think Matt Schnell, coming off of his recent fight where he took a ton of damage and battled his way back, he's always got suspect durability. I think Nicolau can touch him and absolutely crack that chin yet again. And even if they do get into kind of a more competitive back and forth fight, I think Nicolau is the better wrestler. Schnell will probably play jiu-jitsu and go on his back and play from bottom. And I think Nicolau is a good enough BJJ practitioner to go ahead and be safe and defend himself and not get caught in anything stupid. And then on the feet, if we're going volume versus power, I think Schnell's going to get hurt every time Nicolau touches him. So it's going to be a case of Matt Schnell in the small cage has to be able to jab Nicolau to death and never get touched the opposite direction to win this fight. He's got to fight perfect. Now, we've seen him do it before. We have absolutely seen Matt Schnell pull off a perfect performance in the past. Similarly to the Jack Hermansson spot, you've got Nicolau by decision at plus 160. Matt Schnell by decision is plus 650. Like, if you need a hedged leg, I don't think Schnell is finishing Nicolau. Nicolau doesn't get finished. So if he's going to win this thing, I think it's Schnell by decision, and plus 650 is a pretty sweet number to take a stab on this guy pulling off another upset. But I do think that eventually he gets cracked by Matheus Nicolau or Nicolau just controls him completely throughout the fight. So that's my parlay. That's my two-leg square as fuck parlay. Next up, Bryan Barberena taking on Rafael dos Anjos. Barb came in at 170.5, RDA 170 on the dot. We've got classic soft body Barb. FaceTiming his kids up on the scale today. No real care in the world. Rafael dos Anjos made weight easy. You know, he doesn't have to cut down to 155, so he looked good. Solid flex, no problems. Decent size advantage for Bryan Barberena. And I know everyone is just selling this one down the river. RDA is the lock of the century, minus 550. He's going to finish Barb. He's given up on the dream of being a UFC champion. He doesn't care if he fights the top contenders, the guys who, you know, he felt escaped him in the past. He doesn't worry about those types of things anymore. He's coming off getting knocked out. He's 39 years old. Like, these are all bad things about Rafael dos Anjos. Like, is he a different caliber fighter than Bryan Barberena? Yeah. If we rewind this thing even just 1 year, I think Rafael smashes Barb's face in. But given what just happened to him, would I be at all surprised if he didn't quite have the oomph he needed on Saturday and Bryan Barberena just wanted it more? We've seen Barb taken down by everybody. He gets back up. And then he puts 100 significant strikes on you. Like, that's how Bryan Barberena fights. I can see Rafael dos Anjos maybe for the first time in his career wilting in that kind of a situation if he's got one foot in the grave after what just happened to him. Now, I know it was Fiziev that did that to him. I know it was a 5-round fight that happened to him. But at the same time, this is a bigger, younger opponent and a guy who he couldn't care less about. Rafael dos Anjos is officially on the retirement track. He's just getting in there for a paycheck. So I'm not laying minus 550 on RDA. I'm also not betting Bryan Barberena at this point. It's another spot just like Darren Elkins. If the fight is close, if the fight is competitive, if it looks like Barb might be taken over, I will jump in live here on the big fat underdog and take my shot in fight to try and sneak in some units that way. However, I'm not going to do anything on this one pre-flop. If you think Bryan Barberena can withstand RDA, Godspeed, good luck to you. Rafael dos Anjos probably just grinds this guy out up against the cage and wins a boring decision, so the over 2.5 at minus 180 is probably good here, but I'm not as bullish on RDA as a lot of other people are in the betting community right now. Main event time, folks. Here we go. Sorry for the long show today. Like I said, we got a big-ass card, so if you made it this far with me, give me a like. Just toss me a little like. Hit the button. Beep. It's good luck. It's good karma. All right, main event time. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Kevin Holland. We've got 170 for Thompson, 170.5 for Kevin Holland. No issues for either guys. I mean, Kevin Holland first to the scale today looked fantastic. Had a big smile on his face. He definitely is shredded up at 170 pounds. Belongs here. He really does. Competing at 185 does him no favors. No issues for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's been around forever. We knew this wasn't going to be an issue. Both guys smiling and goofing off at the ceremonial face-offs, covering their nips up for some reason. Get a bra. No, I don't know. These guys are having fun. They were on each other's podcasts and doing interviews with each other. This is a real buddy-buddy situation here, which makes me wonder how the fight's going to go. I mean, Kevin Holland opened up as a pick'em price tag here. He's minus 170 now. So the gamblers all side with Kevin Holland. Everybody's just piling in on Holland. And I know Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is 40 years old, but if this is a kickboxing match, which we all know Holland wants, it's going to be close. I have a hard time laying minus 170 against Wonderboy when not many people in this world outstrike Wonderboy. I just think Kevin Holland has to get a finish to make it clear and clean. He probably wins. He is the much younger fighter. He is the star. He is the guy the UFC is looking to push. So he probably does go ahead and get the win. Right now, you've got the total at 4.5 at Superbook Sports. The over 4.5 is plus 150. The under 4.5 is minus 170. And I think that kind of makes sense. I think this fight has a decent chance to go all 25 minutes because if these guys are having fun and goofing around and, if Holland doesn't start connecting the way he thinks he's going to, he'll probably just go into kind of sparring mode and grind out a decision victory if he can get it done that way rather than really pushing the pace for a finish. He talked about starting to catch Stephen Wonderboy Thompson the later the fight goes, and I think that makes sense. The old man slowing down, eventually the younger guy is going to take over. So I can see this thing finishing in the championship rounds. But I also can see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson just still having it, still being the best karate guy in the UFC and being able to avoid a lot of those damaging punches and making Kevin Holland really work for it and having this thing go to a greasy decision. I kind of like the over 4.5 at plus 150. I'm honestly thinking about buying down and taking like an over 2.5 or an over 3.5 because I do think this fight gets at least the 15 minutes. I don't expect Kevin Holland to crack Stephen Thompson super early in this fight. I think it'll be a fun at least 2 or 3 rounds of competitive striking before we see any type of actual damaging punches. We've seen Kevin Holland do this before. He plays with his food. He plays with his food. And if you give him a finishing opportunity, he will take it. But until that kind of presents itself, he's more than willing to just stand back and play. So I do think the over 2.5 is probably the best way to address this one. You have to find an alternate total, obviously, and pay a little bit more chalk on it, but that's probably the way to go. That's the Undefeated post weigh-in show, folks. Keep an eye on social media. I'll be locking in my final card tonight, tomorrow morning, obviously, and I'll be tweeting all my action as I always do. Throw me a like, subscribe here if you haven't already. Good luck on all your degenerate action. If you have any questions or if you want to leave your best bet, losing my throat, losing my voice. Sorry, everybody. Still getting over the sick. Leave those in the comments below. Love you guys. Good luck. Let's roll.